Next up, we have Tom Rieger, an industry pundit and guest lecturer. Tom is here to answer the questions. What is digital transformation and how can you start? Welcome, Tom.
Well, thank you. So I did want to take this moment because I was very appreciative of Teresa reaching out to me, because I've been someone who has been in the industry for a long time. I worked at FileNet and IBM, and I've been in the digital asset management world, and I worked for EMC Documentum. And most recently, I was working for a consultancy where we were focusing on this idea of how do we help clients do this thing called digital transformation. But the first thing we needed to do was let's define it. I started with the idea of, well, I need a premise, I need a foundation. And I found this phenomenal article written by the president and CEO of Fifth Third Bank. And now it's worth mentioning, too, that on this webcast, there's about 60 countries worth of people who pre-register for this webcast. So for those of you who do not know who Fifth Third Bank is, they're a bank based out of the middle part of the United States in Ohio, over 160 years old. They have over 1,100 branches, and they're actually Fortune 366 on the Fortune 500. So you think about it, they've been around a long time, and they have discovered, even as a Midwest bank, that they are being compared not to other banks by their customers, but those customers' last best digital experience. So that means that even though they are sitting here in Cincinnati with 1,100 branches, they are being compared to Netflix and Amazon and whatever anything else does on their mobile device or in their browser. So how do we adjust our banking experience to better compete with that last best digital experience? And also, he ends the article, I think, in a very powerful way. He says, in understanding this, everyone, are you going to shrink from this knowledge? Are you going to ignore it? Or are you going to embrace it? And he states here in his article examples of how they as a bank are seeing this huge digital upheaval in what they are experiencing from their customers, from mobile devices, from digital channels, and so on. So I use that as a premise of doing some research, and I tested my hypothesis. And in some research I've done recently, my first two questions are, do you agree with this idea of the last best digital experience? But I think also what really defines where we are today is, now compared to your competition, how well do you think you use technology in competing? And you can go get this paper. It's out on SlideShare to download at your convenience using the bit.ly below. And so firstly, lo and behold, we all agree that, yes, our customers are comparing us to Amazon and Netflix. But what I think is telling is how very few of us actually think we compete better in using technology to communicate to our customers. And I think this is where we start getting into this idea of digital transformation, is this idea of needing to use technology to better compete, to create happier customers in this time of expectations. And these expectations are, I want it now, I want it mobile. And oh, by the way, did I mention what I thought I needed yesterday is going to change tomorrow? So in this research, one of my first drivers that I was looking at was, well, what are some of your input channels? And I think all of us in the content world that we come from understand the idea of paper and PDF files. And lo and behold, these percentages are still what everyone who completed this research felt they were having as input channels from all of their clients, including, lo and behold, the fax machine is still very active, mostly in healthcare and insurance. But what I was also asking was, we have these next generation input channels that we're dealing from a transformational perspective, like text messaging, like mobile applications themselves, like social media as an input channel of how we're hearing from our customers. And also, this is how we're hearing, communicating from our vendors, from our employees. It's really everyone. The second thing I looked at was, we're now in this time of transformation where we need to talk about not just integration, but automation. And we need to be very quick and nimble and simple in how we automate. The world today is not about APIs. APIs are what you go read and understand and how you custom write these integration points. And I kind of created this visual here to give some perspective on what these different technologies are today that exist on demand in the cloud for you to go and try and understand, as you go try things, what makes sense to use. And as you wire these pieces together, they're really there that as you wire them together, they accomplish different things in different ways. But you need to understand that you need a low-code BPM perspective of things. You need some RPA tools. And you also need this ability to have this thing we call process orchestration, or iPaaS. And you have different vendors out there that have different set of capabilities that, when brought forward, give you that foundation of nimbleness and automation. It was also interesting to share that when I think about outputs. So the graph on the right showing the amount of mail that goes through the United States Postal Service and how it has changed over the last 10 years, and it's gone down by 55 billion pieces of mail. Well, so we've done a great job, everyone, at trying to remove paper and ink and postage from the act of communication, but we still need to respect that there's other communication mediums. So just as we have more inputs, we now have more outputs. And also, we need to respect that amongst these communication mediums that we have with people, a lot of them are more real-time. They all need to be more secure. And also, they need to have a closed loop. It isn't just that you're sending a communication out to someone in real time, but you may get a response that kicks something else off. So the moral of the story here is you need to be ready for what the customers expect from you. Now, also in our research, I thought this was a very statistic that came back. 90% of us still in some fashion require a ballpoint pen in someone's hand signing a piece of paper in that business transaction somewhere. So this opportunity to automate things is paramount. Now, there's also something we need to understand too, is but we need to start somewhere. So part of my presentation here wasn't just helping us try to define what digital transformation is, but also where can we start? Well, there's two things we need to understand. One, I think there's a certain amount of cleaning up that we all need to do to some degrees within our existing infrastructure. And also there's two approaches to take to this idea of digital transformation. Kind of this bottom-up approach, kind of what I call under the radar, or do you have this executive shift going on where you have executive sponsors and there's a cultural shift in your organization to try to do something different and to think differently? Well, I would challenge firstly that you need to surround and augment. So this idea of surrounding and augmenting your existing systems, and you see tools like RPAs and iPaaS that can work with existing technologies, whether they're on-premise or in the cloud or both, to somehow create this ability to have new functional capabilities and new repositories integrate and automate better together. And then there's also this idea of how do you go and archive and retire things? I can tell you I've been in technology long enough, and I've created this problem, is there's a lot of legacy technologies out there that exist in your data center that honestly are in the way. They're in the way from a financial perspective. They're in the way from needing to find a better place to put things from a data retention perspective. And also, how do you simplify what you're trying to work with by cleaning out the old? So where do you start? Let's also appreciate that I think everyone on the phone today, from a sponsor perspective, from a technology perspective, offer things for you to try for free. And if you look at all of those other technologies I mentioned from an RPA perspective and from a process orchestration perspective, your ability to provision those and use those for free are available. Now, I don't know about you, but if I think about the sum of what I just described, that means that your ability to try things at no risk, wire them together, and see what potentially comes out the other end, start becoming reality. And that's where a lot of these things come into play, is how do you start from an idea and move that idea into a prototype, and then move that prototype into something you go live with. So where do you start? And I thought I would share a couple of examples of things that I have been involved with personally that really, especially if this is about you selling something to your executives to change what is possible in your organization. These are some examples. And the first one is this idea of text messaging. And I don't know, based on where you are in the world, but I know at least here in the United States, text messages are free now. And it gives you this opportunity to engage with people in new ways, but just as importantly, ways for them to engage with you. This example starts with, so pick an iPaaS engine. And I mentioned Workato or Dell Boomi because I found them to be very effective, and I wanted to choose this use case to be a very broad vendor view. Twilio allows you to do text messaging, and it's pennies per text message, and you can start today. Let's say you have a text message that comes in the door. Someone takes a picture with their phone and attaches it to the text message. So the first thing you need to do is, how do I automate understanding what the text message is and what's in that JPEG file? So I bounce it against Google Vision. I get a whole bunch of data back from Google. And maybe from that data, I do some validation of if it's real or not. And I go use something like an AIIM as a low-code engine. And I put the JPEG file into Box. So I need to have an unstructured content repository. Because let's understand here, all these engines or these technologies I'm talking about lack understanding content. So you need content intelligence systems. And Box has a phenomenal platform out there to do that in. And then once you receive all of that, you want to then send that message back to your customer saying, thank you, we've opened a case, and we'll respond to you shortly. Because lo and behold, nobody wants to wait for a status. We need to understand where things are, whether we're an employee, a customer, or a vendor. So with all of that, though, you also need to have this firewall around all of it from a cloud and on-premise perspective. And Okta brings the most complete engine for doing that. Now, mind you, depending on what you want to accomplish, you can swap in and out any of these image recognition systems or repositories, or if you want to use something else from a low-code or CRM perspective, it's really up to you. That's the beauty of this. Let's think about another example. I talked about that ominous ballpoint pen. So I have this ballpoint pen, and now I want to get rid of it. So I've decided in this case to choose more of a Microsoft-centric view. Because lo and behold, I've also found in my research that of, let's say, the Fortune 1000, 975 of you have Office 365. And with Office 365, you get access to a lot of technologies through Microsoft. And again, we're prototyping. We're trying. So let's use something we have already. So let's say you use Microsoft Flow as your iPaaS engine, and you want to send a communication out from your system of record internally to a client for e-signature. So I need to create what the document is, the contract, and I use a web merge for that. I send it with SendGrid because SendGrid brings this secure, a validated sending engine that I can have very secure communications with. DocuSign is kind of the 800-pound gorilla in the e-signature space, and they all work seamlessly together. I then want to bring all of that back from the DocuSign signature perspective. I want to listen for that someone signed it, and I want to put the results into a repository inside Microsoft with a workflow empowered by Power Apps. I want to stick the object itself into SharePoint, but then I want to send a text message back to the person saying, hey, we received the signed contract. Thank you very much. So I use Twilio again. And again, I kind of wrap all of this around from a security perspective with Okta. Now, there's also other things you could do. I have inbound emails. As I described earlier, I found there's still a lot of inbound emails with PDF files that come in the door. How do I automate that? Or you see here from how do I use some intelligent capture capabilities to automate and learn from what comes in the door? And you look at where AWS has come out with some technology. I've seen some great cloud technologies that do high-end capture from image trust. I see Ethisoft out there, Doc Parser. Hyperscience has some amazing artificial intelligence that they wrap around all of this to do some things. Or sometimes life is as simple as, let's just put up an e-form. Because I tell you what, the last time I have to go download a PDF file, print it out, fill it out, scan it, and email it back to somebody, in 2019, why is that my reality? Why can't I just have an e-form? These are things to help you start this journey in using these new technologies to change something about your enterprise, about your customer experience, your employee experience, your vendor experience, that, oh, by the way, since it's all in the cloud, you could try it for free. Now, this is something that I have always appreciated reading, is the co-founder of Okta, Todd McKinnon, actually publishes from his perspective the technologies that they're seeing the greatest growth in consumption on the internet. And my apologies, this is a terrible, terrible view of this graphic. It's hard to read. But I did put a bit.ly in the bottom left-hand corner there that will directly take you to his blog so you can look at it for yourself. And you see where the growth in the marketplace of using these technologies is growing dramatically over the last, in this case, it's about a 4-year cycle. Miscellaneous items to mention. I also think about how do I integrate with my on-premise technologies. We've spent trillions of dollars over the last 20 years through the sausage grinder of implementing complex on-premise things. Or we've also turned on things like Salesforce or ServiceNow or some very large enterprise technologies in the cloud. I need to make sure that I keep things integrated, because if I can't integrate it, I can't automate it. So I found, for instance, especially in the content world, SkySync brings a phenomenal tool to allow you to integrate with things that you have already to things that you want to go to or engage with bidirectionally. So it's this heterogeneous replication engine. Also, all of these iPaaS tools and all these RPA tools, part of what their secret sauce is to bear as well is their ability to integrate with what you have on premise or integrate with what you were doing from an enterprise perspective. That is paramount in truly implementing transformation. This is not about rip and replace. This is not about taking out something that's old and putting in something new. And this is not about just lifting something you did before into the cloud and thinking, hey, I'm in the cloud now, the world's a better place. So the moral of the story is, everything I've described to you is available right now. Everything I talk to you right now is available for a free trial. Everything I talk to you right now is you pay based on your usage. And everything I'm talking about right now from an integration automation perspective is seamless. But also, as we dealing with a scary world out there, it's all secure. Now, I also want to mention, I did not talk a lot about analytics. I did not talk a lot about data retention and records policies, because those things are now such an integral part of each use case that they are just naturally part of the conversation. If anyone out there would like to have further discussions with me relating to this topic, here's where you can find me from a phone, an email, or a LinkedIn perspective. Or for anyone who happens to be up here in the same snow that I'm in, I'm always looking to get out and have a cup of coffee or other beverages to discuss this further. With that, I'll send it back to Kevin.
Well, thank you, Tom. I really appreciate all of your information today. You've given us a lot about why and how. I know as I'm looking out here at our attendee list, I'm seeing folks from universities, public schools, mortgage brokers, power companies, health companies, a variety of enterprise operations are represented here. What's one way, and not all of us have sort of this aspect that maybe Amazon or Netflix does. What's one way that all of us can move forward in an application that we maybe all have in common that we can take advantage of digital transformation right away?
You know, I think it starts, Kevin, with this idea of are you working with technology that empowers you to change your business, or are you working with technology that you're somewhat of a slave to? And mind you, I have been a slave to a lot of technology in my years, but I find if you can work with this nimble technology that allows you to do some different things. And I would say one of the first different things that we all contend with is where a human is the point of integration. How often do you have people in your organization who copy and paste, who retype, or heaven forbid, they have a printer in their left hand and a scanner in their right, and they're printing something out on the printer and scanning it with their right hand? How many of these moments of integration, these little, I'll call it nickel and dime moments to do something different, can make such a difference in your user's world? Because, oh, by the way, everything I'm describing, I was trying to focus on how am I making your customers or your students or your citizens in a better place in terms of being informed and engaging, but also how are your employees? Because part of what we have to respect here is this is 2019. How do we have our next generation of employees want to be more engaged in doing high-value work and not just printing out with their left hand and scanning with their right? And I think that exists no matter how big you are, no matter what industry you're in, or no matter where you are in the world.
All right. Well, very good. Thank you. That was Tom Rieger, industry pundit and guest lecturer. Tom, thank you so much for being with us on the event today.